Right, so following on from the issues we had the other night, taking the dizzy cap off, the leads look fine, all the contacts look fine within that, so we've got no issues there. What I've done is then open the points fully, so I can just talk to you quickly about what the points are like and adjusting those. So got my feeler gauge ready, so we can sort that out. What I'm also going to do while we're there is take out and replace all the plugs, so it actually looks like Oscar's running slightly rich at the moment. So we're going to replace those with some nice new BP7ESs from NGK, which is what he was running anyway, because he's got a tuned engine. These are really great plugs for that, so we'll get those in as well. So overall, what I'm going to do before we go out on a run with him is just really give him a bit of a once over, a bit of a service, check the oil levels, check the coolant levels, all generally pretty fine. Oscar doesn't tend to lose too much. And yeah, replace the plugs, check the gap on the points. I'll check the gaps on the plugs as well, because they should come gapped, but probably not. So we'll use this again for that. Let's get to it. Right, so under here, obviously we can see the plugs are out, dizzy cap's off. Now what I wanted to try and show you on the cap was, so these action cams aren't great at detail, but what we've got here is your rotor arm. We've got the points just here, and you can see what I've done is I've turned the engine over manually using the handle, and I've got it so the points are open at their widest point. Now what we're going to do, there's a large screw just here, there. I'm going to slacken that off, and then what we can do is put our feeler gauge in between the 2 points here, and we're going to close that gap down onto the feeler gauge so it's just tight enough that there's a bit of resistance as you try and move it in and out. And then what we'll do is pinch up that screw there, and then that should be our points adjusted to the correct opening. So using the feeler gauge, I'm going to use a .015. In the manual it says a .016, but I don't think I've actually got that on my gauge. So I think an acceptable range is between .014 and .016. So I'm going to go for 1.5 right in the middle, get that set, and then we'll give it a whirl. I'm hoping some of these poor running issues that I was getting are a result of these points closing up, and also potentially a bit of running rich. So what we'll do is, once we've got the new plugs in, we'll come round and have a bit of a look at the jet on the carb, and maybe just adjust that slightly to a slightly leaner mix, but only doing sort of one flat at a time, if you like, rather than going whole hog, and just see what improvements that brings, because the plugs were a little dark when we looked at them. So let's get on and get those changes done. Right, so in terms of the gaps and things like that, I'm getting all my information out of this, which is the workshop manual for the car. And if you guys are working on a classic car or anything like that, I'd really recommend you get hold of the manufacturer's workshop manual, or at least a Haynes manual, because it gives you pretty much the same information. But what I've found with the workshop one is it's a little bit more detailed and the diagrams are better. So I prefer to use this, but the Haynes is still quite good for a quick reference I've got. Right, so we've got our plug, got our feeler gauge. This is the 63mm or the .025, and remember we were looking for 2.4 to 2.6, so 2.5 works nicely. And what we can do is just pop that in there, and actually that's good. So there's just a bit of resistance between the feeler blade and that. Right, so we've got one in already. I'm just going to hand tighten this plug in, and then if we've got space to get in there around you guys as well, it's got quite a big mic on, just go ahead and tighten this up. That washer will crush down, and then just pinch it up, and there we go, that's done. Right, so when doing this on the car, it's quite hard to actually get it to the point where you guys can get in and see what I'm doing. If I had a workshop, I'd be able to pop this in a vise and it'd be a lot easier. So I'm just going to undo the screw which secures the backing plate on the points. And what that'll do is release them to allow them to close up. I'm going to pop my feeler gauge in between the points. So I'm just going to open up a little bit so I can get my feeler in. Right, so the gauge is in there now. So what I can do is almost leave that in there with the points squeezing together on it. And then all I'm going to do is just tighten up that screw again, and that should be the point set. What we'll do is when we take it out, we'll check then that the gap remains, and we should be good to go. So it's pretty easy. It's just a bit difficult when you're trying to do it on the car, but it's just one of those things. On these engines you can generally access everything pretty easily. Right, so that's set. So now you can see that that is moving in between the points, but it's pretty tight. Right, so that's it, we finally got it. Takes a bit of fiddling with. What you've got to make sure is that you're pushing the base plate sort of down in the clockwise direction, so there's actually a notch at the bottom that you can get a screwdriver into to push it down. But you don't want to try and, if you try and force the point on this side that way, you run the risk of breaking it and sort of bending it out of shape and whatever. So you want to make sure you're going down, so it just takes a bit of fiddling, particularly on the car, like I say, and then you can get it in. But what we've got now is that gap is perfect, where it's giving us some resistance, almost like sandpaper either side of that as you're pushing it through. So that's perfect, we've got that done. So we'll go ahead and get the cap back on. There we go. Right, the first clip is just here, and if you push the clip sort of midway down, it just snaps back on nice and easily. If you try and push it at the top, it's not so easy. So it's a little tip there. If you press it from towards the base, and that's it, clipped on nicely. So we'll just go and marry up these leads. So we've got 2, 4. Where's our number 1? Number 1. So we'll get that on first. Over there, clipped on nice. Number 2. Number 3. And number 4. Right. Oh, and then don't forget to plug in your coil as well. Right, so we've got plugs and the points have been adjusted. So the plugs have been gapped, the points have been gapped, new plugs in, closed up the dizzy cap, and just now kind of just watching it over, just seeing how it warms up. It's on slight choke at the moment, so once it's fully warmed up, what we'll do is take it for a bit of a spin, and then see how it's going. Right, so just back off the run now. It went a lot better than last time, but what we're still getting a little bit is this. So we're not getting the oil pressure drop, we're not getting the ignition light coming on now, so I think we've cured all of that. I think this is probably related to just running rich, so I'm going to adjust the carb a little bit, just a couple of flaps, just to see if that makes any difference, take that mixture a little bit leaner, and see if that helps improve things, because it is just coughing a little bit now, whereas before it was like almost like surges, like there was something particularly wrong with the ignition system. But now just get that like coughing coming through, which is interrupting that nice smooth burble that we normally get. So let's just adjust the carb a little bit and see what that does. I'm not trying to get this perfect, but as we're on a road trip tomorrow, I just want to try and get it just so it runs as smoothly as possible. It's a good old boy and good fun to drive, so let's get him as best as we can today. And then I've actually got electronic ignition kit to put on, so I'm probably going to get that put on during the autumn. And also I think I'm going to look to get a dynamometer as well and stick that in, so he's sort of modernised a little bit but stealthy, so you can't really see it. But anyway, let's adjust this carb. Right, so I've adjusted the jet now. I've just turned it up a few flats just to try and bring the mixture a little bit more leaner. It did seem to stop a few of the pots, but it was still going. But I don't want to do too many things right now because, like I said, we plan to go out for a drive this weekend. So what I'm going to do is leave it where it is, take it for the drive, and then kind of just see how it performs, and then probably do some finer adjustments once we're back and don't really have the pressure of actually needing to use him. So But generally, driving wise, feels perfect. It's running fine, pulls really nicely, so I don't think there's anything too wrong there. Like I say, I think it's more finer adjustments now. But I think that's it. I'll end it here. If you're liking the content, do drop a like. Please subscribe to the channel, that'd mean a lot. And we'll catch you in the next video, which should be a drive out into the peaks.